are recording. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lotta Hawkins. Thank you for joining us. I have James White and Schavonne, and it's Flood.
Yes.
Okay, Flood here joining us today, and we're just going to have a open, casual conversation about the law, about trucking, about insurance, just really wherever it goes from here. The purpose of the video is just to make sure that we do have opportunities to have these discussions because of how important they are. And unfortunately, a lot of these discussions are foregone because we think we already know the answer. We think we already know how this works. Come to find out, claim time or some other legal situation, we may have been looking at it all wrong. So with that, I'm going to let everyone here do their own introductions. I just really love people doing their own introductions. And so I'll start off with you first, James.
My name's James White. I am 41 years old. I live in Knoxville area, Tennessee. I'm a good old boy from West Virginia. I ended up moving to Tennessee to finish my law degree. I'm an attorney. I sort of dream hopped a little bit. I was a police officer for almost a decade. Jumped around. I have an MBA in international business and healthcare management. And I'm really just kind of never satisfied with what I've learned, and I'm always seeking to learn more. And so yeah, I found my way into the trucking business because the opportunity presented itself with my 21-year-old son, who decided he wanted to go be a truck driver. And then when he got out there and he drove for a company, he didn't like the experience, and he said, Dad, you have infinite time and energy. Why don't you start a business that I'll just participate mildly in, and you can run for me? And so here we are. So I found out in the process that learning how to do it correctly is a full-time job. I spend more time trying to figure out back office stuff, paperwork, compliance, insurance. I mean, guys, you need a 90-day research period before you jump into this business at a minimum. I mean,
Yes.
I studied this for 7 months before I
Oh,
jumped in.
wow.
But anyway, I don't want to take up too much time. But I have a background in a bunch of different stuff. I'm really just kind of a weird animal, to be honest with you. But I'm interested in the law and I'm interested in business, and so that's kind of how we connected. Of
Yes, definitely. And thank you for your time and the introduction. We'll go ahead to Siobhan.
course.
Oh, hey. So my name is Schavonne Flood. I am new in the commercial trucking ownership part of the business. I started getting around the commercial trucking industry as a salesperson. So I sell commercial truck tires for Michelin. I don't know if I could use their name, but in any event, it's accurate.
It's out
And
now.
I did that as a field sales rep for 12 years. So in doing that, I had to learn a lot about the commercial trucking industry, specifically maintenance, cost per mile, deadheading. So all of the terms that it seems like people are being introduced to as they get into the industry, I'm already fairly familiar with. So I said I should take this knowledge and really move it into something that could be either a better revenue stream or at least a second revenue stream. So that's kind of where I'm starting out now. So I've already secured the funding for the truck. I'm in the process of locating a driver. Hopefully I'm picking up a truck this week. And then I'm really looking at the insurance piece of it, because in addition to the fuel and the driver and some maintenance, I know tires are very expensive. I'm learning that the insurance is going to be really expensive. So
Right,
I'm
possibly.
hoping to get some information so that my numbers can be where they need to be in order for me to make this work. I'm not looking to, quit my job on one truck, but I am looking to do it, as James mentioned, in the right way so
Mhm.
that I can scale and grow in a reasonable way. But I'm really looking at the insurance piece of it so I can get a better understanding of, I know it's not going to be high forever, but what do I need to do to get in? Like, what do I need to be prepared for to get
Okay.
in? So I've done kind of the preliminary work. The equipment's going to be really expensive. I got that. But now it's this other ongoing expense that I need to get really educated about very quickly.
It
So,
is, and I like how you guys both mentioned just insurance and the back office part of it, because that's really what insurance starts to feel like, compliance. And so myself, again, I'm an insurance agency owner. My agency is in the niche of transportation, even though we serve other commercial type entities as well. And like yourself, James, and I don't know if we said this before after we started recording, but I've kind of done the hodgepodge of experiences too. I'm 47, and it's just I think it's just something that when you're curious and you like to learn, it just is where it takes you. I really feel like Dr. Seuss a lot of times just it's just like
Yeah.
whatever arrives. And so I've had a bail bonds business with my ex-husband for 7 years. I've worked in the cemetery business for 2 years. And right before I transitioned into insurance and such, I was a special education high school teacher. And so it's just those things that life and all that mix of stuff brings you. And I have a 19-year-old son, he'll be 20 in June. And this part of it really came from me thinking of what can I pass down to him. He's my oldest son, I have
Yeah.
two. And I started thinking of all my experiences and even, my past business experience. I don't have anything. I have a lot of debt for that. And it was just like, I don't want to pass that part, but how can I
Right.
the next part, and what are some of his interests, my interests, and how can we put this together? So I'm
Right.
gonna circle now that everyone's done an introduction, because I'll circle around back. I found and I'm trying to think if I first found you on YouTube or first found you in the Transportation Gurus group. It might have been back to back, but
Yeah.
a topic of interest that I really want to start off talking about is the guns, just guns and
Yeah.
everything. My sweetie, he's gone through the course. We're in Texas, and I understand Texas has some very lenient rules, and just a lot of, I think, across all the states, everyone's really confused because some places and areas you can, other places you can't. But as we said earlier, just overall, where do you get this information? How do you find out more? But if you'll kind of talk a little bit more about guns and trucks for us, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, of course. Well, I think the most valuable information, and I'm not paid or sponsored by these people. It certainly would be nice to affiliate at some point, but the U.S. Concealed Carry Association will tell you about everything, and actually have a video. I don't know, maybe you'll link to it in the description somewhere along the way, but we have the video, and I actually go where I display the site in the video, where I did the video on commercial guns. It's about a 10-minute, 12-minute video, but it actually lists out the U.S. Concealed Carry Association. The great thing about that is it gives you what's called a reciprocity map, and you can just select your state, and you can learn about the different laws in your state. But where it's really helpful is if you're going to go out of state. And of course, Texas is like Tennessee. We're born shooting guns. Like, we come straight out of the womb and we've got a Glock. I mean, that's just the way it is. But, and that's wonderful. The problem is not everybody, unfortunately, the right to self-defense in our country has been reduced to be relative to your political ideology in some ways. And so, we've gotten sort of tangled up in this idea that, politics are more important than safety. And in some ways, I think you might vote a certain way, and I might vote a certain way, but we might feel differently about that gun when it comes to protecting ourselves or our family. We might not admit it in public, but
Mhm.
we might still want to have the ability to know the rules, even if it's something we don't discuss in public, about carrying a gun in a vehicle, commercial or otherwise. In Tennessee, they actually, in 2014, they actually extended the Castle Doctrine in Tennessee to make it to where even people who were under 21 could carry a gun in a car, and it became an extension of your home for the purposes of that gun being
Mhm.
legal. And so, um, you could just have a gun in your car, and actually Tennessee took it a step further and said that there's a legal presumption that if you're attacked in a vehicle, that is considered or presumed to be a deadly threat. And so it kind of falls into, and you can get really deep into the woods in this, or into the weeds in this. It talks about staying your grounds and what your duty to retreat are and all that stuff. And I plan on touching on that on my channel down the line. But really, the truth is there's federal law that protects you when you're carrying a gun in a commercial vehicle or any vehicle, as long as you comply with it. Most of the time, even if you're in an area like Massachusetts, New York, Maryland, Chicago, Illinois, and California, places that would normally be prohibitive as it relates to carrying a gun. As long as you have the ammunition separate from the gun and you've got the gun in a locked compartment, you are protected by federal law.
Hmm.
And so, but it really is each person's responsibility. And I say this in the video, in the same way that you would not go to a place without knowing where the gas stations are or fuel stations. I'm so stuck on my kid gets on to me all the time because I call it gas. It's diesel, guys. I'm sorry. But you want to know where you can stop to eat. You want to know where you can stop to fuel. You should know what the gun laws are if you're going to carry a gun. And it's just as important because it can literally end your trucking business, your livelihood, everything. And as the last plug I'll say about the U.S. Concealed Carry Association, they sell insurance for like $20 a month that they will actually hire you an attorney that specializes in self-defense law if you are in a self-defense shooting situation. I mean, it's probably the best thing you can buy. And again, I get no kickback from that. I just happen to be an insured under their policy. I just think it's a great thing. If you're going to carry a gun, just understand it comes with an enormous amount of responsibility, and that you should insure yourself properly, just like you would anything else. If you're going to carry a gun, you're going to have the responsibility of potentially taking somebody's life. You should take that as seriously as possible.
Definitely. Siobhan, I'll let you kind of piggyback on there. As someone researching the industry, you're looking at becoming an owner and you're hiring drivers. Is this something that you're going to talk about with your potential driver? What's your thoughts on the subject?
I didn't really think about opening the conversation with a potential driver, but the person I'm planning to hire, I'm in conversations with her, and I'm hoping she'll come on board. I would imagine that, there would be a need if she's going over the road to protect herself in the event that something happens. And I'm a gun owner. I'll say this from the door. I live in South Carolina, but I didn't grow up in South Carolina. I grew up in New York City. So looking at me, I'm probably the least likely gun owner or person to own a gun. But I'm in South Carolina now. The laws are what they are. And I have purchased a 12 gauge to protect myself and my family. But I don't carry it in my car. And like James said, you are allowed to carry a weapon in your vehicle in South Carolina as well. So I'm all for that. And I fully understand the need to protect oneself, but I would have to get more educated about, is it okay for me to be the owner of a trucking company and allow people to carry a weapon in their car? And I've always thought this, and good, bad, or indifferent, even if you tell me I can't, I would rather have it and take, and if I needed it, used it, and take, responsibility for having used it when I needed it, rather than being a story, right? Or a cautionary tale.
Right.
If she had only been able to. So, okay, you say no, I say no, I will absolutely have it if I need it. And if I get in trouble for that, okay, but I'm still here, right? I'm still around. So but to your point, James, we have to get educated. If there's some insurance that one can purchase for that, just in case, but I don't want to be somebody that needed it and didn't have it, right? So
I was hearing that a lot when I was sharing your video link about a lot of the female drivers feeling that way. And as you were saying, even thinking about it in that terms of, look, I don't really even care what they say. I have to be protected because I'm here in this cabin alone, far, far away from home, and I need to do what I need to do. And so, yeah, I think that's kind of a common thought. And just I like hearing their different perspectives too. And even like, so my honey has a couple of guns. He's ex-military and all that stuff. And he keeps, trying to get me educated. That's how I say we've been to the, gun range and stuff together. I think it's just really novel still for me. And I grew up in a military household and stuff, Air Force though, but to where I see it and it's like, it's far-fetched, but then I kind of think, what would I do if something happens in a situation where we're away from one another? To my kids,
Yeah.
I have two boys, and it's really got me thinking about things very differently. So I think, I'm gonna reach out for more education too. James, share with us a little bit then. Just so, is trucking your niche in law, or what other type of law do you handle?
No, I'm probably more connected to your bail bonds experience.
Oh,
My niche in law is because I was a police officer for a long time. I understand the criminal justice system, just like we're connected at the medulla. So my niche is criminal defense.
okay.
I'm trying to. It really matters to me to make sure I know enough. I'm not so confident in my knowledge in the trucking industry yet that I can say that I'm an expert. And I want to make sure. I don't walk around telling people I'm an expert anyway, but you understand what I'm saying. I want to make sure before I get into a place where I'm actually offering legal advice to people in a particular area of law that I know more than I would expect them to know. And
Mhm.
so it's I'm trying to learn. I feel like I'm pretty much on top of it for somebody who's been in business less than 60 days in the trucking business. I mean,
Wow.
my authority is 45 days old,
Okay.
but a lot of this I learned because people forget that all this information is free and readily available.
Hmm.
They get sucked in so fast to these companies that charge them thousands of dollars to do compliance and set up their business. The problem with that is that you lose the experience that you gain when you do it the hard way, you know? So you go out here and you set up your own LLC and you set up your own, do your own FMCSA application and you negotiate rates. People come in and they immediately sort of hire a middleman to take care of this stuff for them. And there's a loss there
Hmm.
because if something happens and that middleman doesn't come through, you're stuck and you don't know how you got there. It's sort of like riding with somebody you don't know to a place you don't know where you're going. You know what
Right.
I mean? And so you
Absolutely.
don't know how to get there and you don't know how to get back and you don't know what you're going to do if you lose them. Um, so that's sort of another reason that I didn't hire a dispatcher because if you depend on that person to negotiate all the loads and the brokers relationships and you get caught in a situation where you don't know how to do that stuff, what happens if your dispatcher walks or something happens and you can't depend on that person anymore and you have no clue how to run your business? This is a weekly expense business. Like when you drive 2,500 miles at 3.25 a gallon, you need to be able to come off a couple $1,000s every week just to
Mhm.
cover your baseline. You have to know how to get a load. You have to know how to do this business on your own without somebody else um, being there to supply you with those certain things. And so for me, it was just jumping in here and trying to figure out how to do this on my own without having to rely on anybody else. And then I really subscribe to the each one teach one mentality. Um, and I'm not tooting my own horn because I don't do things for attention, but I've got several people that I mentor that just I feel confident enough in my knowledge that I'm helping them, and I try to just plug what I've learned and pass it along. And I don't ask anything in return for that. And I would never name their names. And hopefully they realize that I'm doing it to try to help them. But you were talking about guns and being familiar with them. I look at guns like I do a manual shift vehicle. I made both of my children learn how to drive a manual shift vehicle, and it wasn't because I necessarily wanted them to have one. It was because if they were at a party and somebody was too drunk to drive, or they got into a situation where their boyfriend wouldn't let them leave, I wanted them to be able to get in that car, any car, and get to a safe place. And so I look at that in the same way. You don't know when you're going to find yourself in the middle of being a victim. Um, so you better know how to handle a gun. What if the only gun that you're around is the one that somebody's pointing at you, or and if you've got a fight or flight situation and you decide to fight, you better know what to do with the thing when you get a hold of it, you know? And so it's like there's more to the whole gun thing than just, well, am I gonna do this or that? You may have no intention of ever handling, owning, shooting for sport or recreation. You still better know how to use one if you're
Mhm.
confronted with one. And that's just the way I see everything. It's better to be prepared, as was mentioned earlier. Rather be tried by 12 than carried by 6 is the way I look at it. I mean, so I would much rather
Absolutely.
have it and not need it than need it and not have it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Siobhan.
No, I was going to say 100% agree. And it's sad that I think like that. I was Air Force too, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's where I first,
My honey is Army, and he always says you weren't real military.
yeah.
Y'all lived like
You know,
the chair force, and I was like, don't tell my dad
yeah.
that.
No, so that was
He
actually
just
my first interaction with we called it a weapons. They didn't want us to use the term gun, so
Mm,
it was
yeah.
weapons. So I first, handled one, heard one up close, and it shook me. But it was a good experience because now I know how to operate. I had a 9mm. I went in as an officer, so I didn't get to use the M16, but I did get to use the 9mm a good bit. And I just decided on a shotgun for the house because when it's dark and all you see is a
just
shadow, you gotta be
Yeah.
accurate with the 9mm, a little accurate, right?
right.
And what I know is that doesn't always put them down.
Yeah.
Right? And I even hate using those terms. But if you're in my home in the middle of the night, I have to think like that.
Right.
So,
Yes.
but
Well,
I
they're not there to color
no,
or play
no,
or
and
to
I
play
think
catch if
they
they're
need
showing up
to
at
know
2 o'clock in the morning.
the
This
yeah,
is true.
They're not there to crochet for sure.
yeah,
True. No, I mean, I love these conversations. I like kind of delving into the things that, again, we think we know how we would handle, but then having more
Yeah.
education, being exposed to it, and even just hearing how someone else positions themselves, really changes a lot. Kind of the underlining thing I was hearing was just you have to be prepared to overcome fear. And that's, with
Yes.
getting started in the trucking business, and not just shift and defer and avoid that fear because, oh, if I pay for it, I paid X amount of dollars, I won't have to deal with it. Yes, you did.
Yeah.
You're dealing with it because it's your company. And so often with
Yeah.
insurance, I go over and look over their profile, and I'm like, okay, you'll need to update this, you need to change this. And they're like, how? And I said, well, who did this? Like, are you not so and
Yeah.
so? And they'll be like, well, I paid for that. Did they show you anything? Do you have receipts? Do you have your PIN number? Those kind of things. And they're looking at me like, why would you ask that? It's your
Yeah.
business. And that's really
Right.
back to that. If it's your business, if you're gonna put your name on it or involve, like you were saying, James, your money, which
Right.
yeah, that's a lot. You have to
Yeah.
know about it before you decide to outsource things. And yes, if you're knowledgeable of how to get a load, so if someone does, leave abandoned post, you'll know how to move forward. But if you needed to partner with someone to help get you started, that's fine. Just know what it is they're doing
Right.
under your name.
Right.
So yes,
Well,
definitely.
because if you don't, how are you going to know if they did it right if you don't know how to do it? I mean, and then the other thing, a lot of people just don't realize the gravity of this, and I feel like both sides do not understand the gravity of this. When you hire somebody as a dispatcher, you're hiring an agent of your company.
Of your company. Yes.
They are an agent of your company. They have in the same way that you're the agent of the insurance company, they have the ability to bind you as an owner in contract. So the laws of agency, which nobody ever discusses, and I'm not popular among dispatchers because of this, I promise you, because a lot of them do not understand the laws of agency. You have a fiduciary duty as an agent of a company to do what's in the best interest of the owner of that company. If you are calling and you're getting a bad attitude with brokers, you're doing it under my name, and you're doing it under my MC,
Mhm.
and you are representing my company. I need to make sure that I know what you're supposed to be doing before I hire you to do it. And I
Mhm.
need to make sure that you are the right person to represent my company, and that you're not out here representing 10 different people, and all of that is you got self-dealing going on. You've got compromising what is best for my company for the benefit of somebody who's maybe, I'm only paying you 7% and this guy's paying you 12. And so now all of a sudden loads that could come to me go to this guy because they're paying you 12. That's a
That's
problem.
true.
It's a problem from a legal standpoint. And the problem with being a lawyer is that you think of everything in the most extreme legal way. And people are like, yeah, and they're right. Well, nobody's going to sue over that. Yeah, I understand, but it's still important that you know.
Still important,
It's still
It's funny
important
you
that you
said that
understand
because
that.
in my agency, I'm the front person, I'm the marketing person, and my sister is the underwriter. And she'll
Yeah.
ask me like all those questions. So my game is to make sure I have enough knowledge to be able to talk to her. I said, you just gave me an application. I still have to do the hard part. I have
Yes.
to go and explain your jibber jabber to make
Yep.
it make legal sense. And I have
Right.
to make sure I am truly representing what you said. I can't fill in the blanks. So I need to have
Right.
that educational conversation with you to be like, hey, let's think of this. This is the implication. If you go this route, this is the implication here, but it's your business. Is how I always put it back.
Yeah.
It's your business. You're going to have to follow through, come up with the plan, and then have it executed. And just as you mentioned
Yeah.
earlier, any changes to that impacts your premium, because now you've
Yeah.
changed what you are saying you're doing. You're either becoming safer or riskier. There's no really in
Yeah.
between road, because any change is going to be different. Go ahead.
Well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're about to say
I
something.
want to make sure I wasn't stepping on her yet.
No,
Um,
you're
the,
fine. I'm
I,
just gonna say this and then keep listening. I appreciate all the little nuggets you're dropping, James, especially when you talk about the middlemen. I ended up like learning about the middlemen as I got in this process, and it was, hey, I can do this for you. I can set up your authority and get your MC number. And I was thinking I had already done that, but then I'm like, you charge people for that? It is such a simple thing, but
yeah.
and then I'm learning about dispatching and how I just got on the load board before I even decided to move forward to see what a load would pay to move from South Carolina to Illinois, and I got a little educated by that. And I said, there are people that pay you to do this. So I'm happy that there is someone out there who doesn't make me feel crazy for not
No.
looking for people to do these things for me, because I feel like they're not complicated. There are things that are going to be complicated. I get that. And I'm not going to be able to do it all. I'm even looking at not factoring, like
Yeah.
if I can float myself for the first 45 days, why would I pay someone 3% of earnings and
Yeah.
3% of gross? Because when
Yeah.
the gross is going to be big. It's not going to be my net, obviously, but certainly if you get in this, you're going to be looking at a couple 100,000 annually in gross. Definitely won't net out to anywhere near that. But then you pay 3% of that. And it's like,
Yeah.
that's not a small amount of money. 3% of
Well,
200.
my take on factoring is, well, let me just say this too about insurance before I say that about factoring. Insurance, and I'm not saying this because it's Lotta's channel. To be honest with you, I really believe this. Insurance is the single most important thing about the trucking business, especially as a new venture. And here's why. And this is not Lotta and I have not had a conversation about this.
No,
So
that's
this
not
is just,
prompted.
yeah, this is straight from my brain. And actually, to be honest with you, I didn't get my insurance from her because I didn't meet her until after I was active. But I've got a guy named Daniel Summers that I use that he and I have a good relationship. He's on YouTube. I met him on YouTube. He specializes in truck insurance, and that's the only reason that I know some of the things about insurance that I know is because of that. But I'll tell you a funny story. My son, the first day that we were active and moving, he ran our truck into the power lines in our neighborhood. He was not on the insurance at this point. We had to have the utility company come out. So my son's just going to drive up the road to get fuel in the truck. And I'm doing other things. And I'm like, okay, buddy, I love you. And he walks out, and 30 seconds later, I hear pop, and all the electric goes out in the whole neighborhood, I come to learn. And I walk outside, and my child, who I now want to murder, has our box truck that we didn't buy, that we rented, tangled in the power lines. First day. Here's the truth. If I call my insurance company, I'm out of business that day, because nobody is going to take a claim on the first day of business and allow you to keep being insured. Nobody. I don't care who you are. So I'm out here handing out free divorces to these police officers and utility people to keep them from filing a report, because I do not want to have to I don't want to have to pay a $10,000 bill from the utility company, either out of pocket or turn it into my insurance company. But that's how fragile your business is in the first year is that you can't even turn in an insurance claim that if you had run in your personal vehicle, you wouldn't think twice about calling Progressive and saying, hey, I just did this. But look, when you're a new venture and there's only one company in your state that will write you to the tune of 43 grand a year, you best believe that until they get their 43 grand for 1 year, they ain't paying any claims on your behalf and letting you stay in business. So you have to be really careful. And that's why insurance is the most important thing, because if you mess up and you do it wrong and you become uninsurable to that one company that will take a chance on you, you're out. Your business is over.
I think that's
it is so important.
A great point, because people feel like, okay, there's reasonable, there's higher premiums, and then there's just flat out no. You don't want to get to the no. That's why you want to have like an agent or someone that'll kind of talk you through some of this stuff, your growth plans. There's insurance companies out there that don't like growth. Again, their objective is to be safe, to keep insured. We want just the same old each time. So if you come in with 2 trucks and then at the end of the year, or not even the end of the year, when you decide to add 2 more, they don't want you anymore. You just doubled the risk. You're still under your first year. What are you doing? And they'll, instead of giving you double the premium, they'll just say, find somewhere else. And now you have to go find other insurance and explain that whole situation to the next guy. And a lot of people think we don't know. And this is actually the ironic thing, just how different pieces of your life come together, because in bail bonds, I did more of the investigating part and such. And I find myself, when I ask questions and I'm listening to the answers, I start asking those off questions just to fact check what you told me earlier. And if you can kind of make it make sense, I'm like, okay, I'll halfway believe it. But then I go into underwriting tools and I'll start asking more and more. But, the story that we're getting for these applications aren't always the cleanest story. And you do have to build trust and rapport with the person to start peeling back those layers. But some of them, they come with a whole point to try to get over. And you're just like, hold up. And especially the ones that want to wave the money around. Hey, give me some insurance today. I'm ready to buy today. It's like, I'm not selling today. And you just really scared the life out of me saying you want to buy today. Who does that? And it's just like, oh, you've been rejected a time or two. You want to talk about it? We'll talk about it. But anybody, especially anybody new getting into the insurance space, that's so tempting, because that's how we get paid. We're like real estate agents, and we get paid on the front end, not the back. So you've got some agents out there that all they want to do is just move numbers, because that's how they're getting paid. But if you're an agency owner or been in it longer, you learn that, just that rushed business doesn't stay on the books. So they might be around for 3 months, 6 months is a challenge, but then they won't make it to 9 months to finish their policy, 12 months to finish it. And it's like, what did you do this for? And how it hurts all of us in the industry is now statistically, as insurance is looking at what factors happen to make that be a bust for us. Oh, new venture, huh? Oh, this state, huh? Oh, this zip code. And then those rates go higher, higher, higher. And that's when people try to
cut scenario, you get your agency jerked because you screwed around. I mean, I had a buddy that got an insurance quote from somebody that wasn't the guy that I used, and his insurance was $6,000 for the year. And I'm like, bro, that's not right. And he's like, well, that's a good rate. I'm like, yeah, it's a good rate for somebody that's not insured properly. I said, you're new, bro. You're 28. I'm 41. I have a perfect driving record. There's zero chance your insurance rate is going to be cheaper than mine.
Right.
We're both the same, except I'm older with a longer history and no accidents, and yours is half. It doesn't make any sense. So we looked at it. They had written him hot shot, and he's a box truck owner, and they had written him for something to do with, and I don't understand this idiosyncrasy in the insurance game, but it's something to do with needing federal filings to prove that you were within a 200-mile radius. You wrote him for that, which wasn't appropriate for a new venture.
Oh, wow.
And so he goes out and he gets $1 million accident claim, and they don't just jerk his insurance, they jerk your agency license because of that.
Right.
And now you're not writing anymore in that state. And more, like you said, worse than that. You got one company in this state that writes new ventures. Now they don't write them anymore.
They
So
don't
now
write anymore.
you're stuck. God,
And nor-
God forbid you in Florida trying to start a new
I
trucking
was just
business.
about to say that sounds like Florida all day long.
Yeah,
Florida, California, soon to be, New York, possibly on that too. But New York right now is
yeah,
paying so much into the system as
yeah,
well. That's a whole nother story. But Florida for sure, South Florida,
yeah,
yes, you can't
yeah.
find coverage.
And
You
that's because of lawyers. Lawyers have made that the worst because they
Mhm.
pay out claims like this. As soon as you file one, they pay you $10,000. And I mean, honest to goodness, the hard part is insurance is so expensive for commercial trucking. It's hard to instill immediate trust. People assume that you just want to jack the rate, but honest to God, man, you're lucky you're getting insurance. You're
Mhm.
hauling 80,000 pounds towards the public, and you
Yes,
don't
yes,
have a CDL if you're in a box truck. You've got no formal training, and you're just going to be Joe and jump in the truck and haul things. And I mean, people just don't think about the fact that all of this is a risk versus reward calculation. And insurance is all risk management. That's all it is.
that's
You're
all it
betting
is.
you're going to have an accident, and they're betting you're not. And if you make it more likely that you're going to be right, then they're going to get out. That's just
Yeah,
the way it is,
and they'll
you know?
just unplug. I mean, and
Yeah,
some people just feel like, oh, just the rates go up, the rates go up. I'm going to switch, I'm going to change. But again, all that's trackable, and you're having to explain to the next insurance company that you're trying to get on with why you're leaving the first one,
yeah,
and everyone's like, oh, it's just so expensive. Well, what changes did you make from you saying, yes, this sounds like a good deal, to now it's like,
yeah,
oh my gosh, well, you made changes
yeah,
evidently, and now you're paying for those changes. So why is there a problem at this
yeah,
point? Because they didn't
yeah,
plan it. They didn't plan it out. Well, you guys, I thank you for this open conversation. People need to hear this, and they need to hear it more than once. They need to hear it from everybody, because just we have to be all on the same page, because no matter where our
yeah,
seats are, we're still very much interlocked. Because if people stop getting insurance because they just getting into the trucking business is prohibitive, then that's where
yeah,
my business fails, and then the opportunity to
yeah,
have a business goes to the wayside. And it just, I mean, trucking is, I always thought education was the biggest business, or industry, healthcare education, but I would dare put trucking up there, because that's how things are being transported. It's not
yeah,
real until it gets to you, and it has to get to you somewhere. Planes
yeah.
aren't coming up on your front yard. So
Hey,
it has to
that's
it
true.
has to get to you. So
Before you close, could I say
mhm.
this about factoring? Because I got off on a tangent there, and I'm
Oh,
sorry
sure.
about
Go
that.
ahead.
Factoring, I wish that I was in a place where I could float myself. But the thing about factoring that is an invaluable tool for me, because we have we have an ice cream truck, a food truck, I have a law practice, and we have this. So for
Wow.
me, the back office support with factoring is what makes it worth the 3%.
Mhm.
There's just for instance, you were talking about revenue a little bit ago. And I'm sorry, I can't see her when I'm talking, so I hope you guys know who I'm talking
No,
to. But,
it's okay.
yeah,
Go.
sorry.
I'm
So,
listening.
we
I got a
so
pen
we're
out.
doing we're brand new, and we're averaging $600 to $6,500 a week in a semi. So that extrapolated is going to be close to $300,000 at the end of the year.
Mhm.
If you do $500,000 at the end of the year, you're going to pay $15,000 to a factoring company to chase down people who owe you money, to advance you money within 24, 48, 36 hours. And I'm
Mhm.
going to tell you right now, I set a certain amount of money aside. There are certain things that happen. Like I ran for Coyote this week or last week. We did 3 loads for them, $1,800 each. Boom, 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 back to back. When I went to upload their invoice to the factoring company, they said, oh, wait, you've got to have a notice of assignment. That takes 6 days on average.
Wow.
Now, we ran 2,500 miles, which means at 9 miles to the gallon, I've factored how I've paid out of pocket, however many gallons of diesel fuel that is.
Mhm.
Okay, I don't know what it is, but it's somewhere to the tune of $800 to $1,000 that had to come out of my pocket.
Mhm.
So I've paid for the truck, which is $1,100 a week because I rent my trucks because that's my risk versus reward. That's a whole other subject that we don't have time for, but I rent instead of buy. because you can walk away if something happens and you have an accident and your insurance cancels. Insurance is not a box you check. You're out of business if your insurance cancels in your first year, and now you've got a truck payment. Okay, if you rent, you don't have that problem. So I rent. It's $1,100. So I paid $1,100 for that week. I paid probably close to $1,000 in fuel. So that's $2,000 I had to spend out of pocket and do this work before I could. So if you do that 3 weeks, if you have 10 grand set aside for that, then that's okay. But you may come a time where they're taking money out of your account and you're like watching the balance go down for the money that you've set aside. And you're like, okay, I'm glad I have a factoring company.
Okay.
Because it may get to the point, if you're going to be a fleet owner, and you don't have to factor forever, that's up to you. But if you're going to be a fleet owner, that might get back office stuff might get to the place where you're like, I'm going to have to hire somebody. I promise you, it's going to cost you more than $15,000 for every $500,000 of revenue you do to hire somebody to manage that. So just something to consider. Obviously, you have to do what's best for you.
Which factoring company do you use?
I used RTS, but I don't know who she uses, and I didn't want to plug that.
Oh no, I use RTS. I have a couple of them because, like you said, to recommend, and that's all I do as well. To my clients, I like to try to find the ones that fit them, and RTS is one of the bigger ones I prefer. TBS and G Squared are my three people.
The reason I use RTS is because as an attorney, I had problems with their contract. And I was like, sorry, guys, because most of those are called adhesion contracts. You don't have the ability to negotiate the terms. And the guy from RTS, and again, if you have an agency agreement with them, I'm not trying to step on that, but the guy from RTS that I use, I called him and I was like, I'm not going to be able to do this. And he's like, what's wrong with it? And I said, this, and this. He said, I'll send it back and we'll fix it. And they structured the contract to what I needed. And that was important to me as an attorney because I understand contractual language better than most people. And when I looked at it, I thought, I'm not giving you a security interest in this, or this. And then I sent it back to him and I was like, I don't like this language. And he says, tell me how to fix it. And he sent me a contract back that I loved. Well, not that I love, but that I could live with, because lawyers don't love contracts, but a contract that I could live with. And that's the reason I chose RTS. Because they were somewhat customizable to what I needed.
Okay. That's big. That's one of the reasons I kind of use G Squared, because they're kind of really small and they have a lot of those decision-making abilities that some of the larger ones have more red tape and stuff to go, at the bigger corporate.
They're more rigid, right?
So you have to find the ones that fit your plans and stuff, and some of them are very flexible. Others, like you said, it is what it is, and you just it's not a good deal all the way around. So I'm going to let you guys, I always close with saying just how can we contact you for more information, and what's something you want out of this whole discussion for anyone watching, to make sure that they've really captured, in this discussion that we've talked behind guns, about insurance, about owner responsibilities. What's something that someone watching should be able to take away from this conversation?
I want people, as it relates to guns, I want people to know that carrying a gun is as big a responsibility as carrying a child. It literally can only do what you make it do. And you have to take it as seriously as you would take holding anything fragile, and not only holding fragile, because I don't know any babies that can take somebody's life unless it's causing them a heart attack. So it really just, you have to take it as serious as you've ever taken anything. Seriously, sorry, I left out the adverb. Sorry, I'm a grammar Nazi. But you have to take it seriously. It has to be something that is the top priority, because you can change everything about yours and somebody else's world by misusing it or misunderstanding it or just being reckless about it. And as it relates to general business, stop listening to these people on YouTube that cause you to want to jump into the most complicated, regulated business on the planet in 2 weeks. Slow down. Learn. This will be here. Everybody's got a stimulus check, a pocket full of cash, and a tax return right now. And everybody wants to get into this game. I was in the box truck business for about a month. I haven't let this out on my channel yet, but I've gotten out of the box truck business already because I had my son's CDL in my back pocket and I had another option. And the box truck game is different. That's where a valuable tool is a really super good dispatcher that knows the box truck business. That's an area where you could really use a dispatcher once you understand how hard it is. But semis, you're probably not going to get stuck anywhere. Your best bet, honest to goodness, is to go, I think, with a semi because it's guaranteed money. The regulations are a little bit different and a little bit harder, but it's guaranteed money. You're not going to get stuck. You don't have to worry about having to shrink your circle down to this universe of things that you can do with a 26-foot box with 8,500 pounds or less. But the biggest takeaway I have is look at business as if it's risk versus reward. Stop listening to people who are not in your shoes and who have already gotten past the hard part tell you about how easy it is. Okay, because it's not, and
That's
it's
true.
expensive.
And
Very.
it's expensive. I agree. Siobhan?
I would just say get educated. I mean, that's the long and the short of it. And don't be lazy with the education, right? Like if
Yeah,
you are looking at somebody offering to set up your authority and do these things that, all you really do need to do is get educated. Do it, right? Dig in and see whether or not it is so complex that you have to pay someone to do it. Because there are going to be parts of the business that you do have to pay someone, or it makes more sense.
yeah,
But the big takeaway is get educated about everything. The gun laws,
yeah,
like James was talking about, the insurance, the cost of the truck, the real costs, not just the acquisition, but also what's it going to cost to maintain this? It has to go down every once in a while for oil changes and things like that. Roll all that in and get your numbers and just get educated. And that's
yeah,
that's what I'm doing now, is getting educated. I got the funding. Before I spend this, I need to know what's going on. And I think learning about the next big expense is my next goal. And that'll be the thing that's needed to pull the trigger. And everyone should do the same. Don't listen
yeah,
to, like James said, all these YouTube folks telling you, get it, go after it. It's hard, and it's not a dumb man's game, right?
it's not for everybody too.
Yeah, some
Absolutely.
think this trucker
Absolutely.
is not very educated. I've worked around them for over a decade now. They don't have my formal education or anyone's formal education, but they are some of the most educated people you'll ever
Yeah,
come across. So, um,
Absolutely. I like to just say the same things what you guys just repeating. Really, just it has to be a long-term strategy. You have to have a strategy. And what I've really liked to say lately is don't listen to anyone you can't talk to. I mean, if you're
yeah,
just watching the entertainment, I mean, we can watch a basketball game, football game, the entertainment, but we're not making life-making decisions off that, or hopefully you're not. And so you have to have someone you can talk to make that research make sense, ask a question when you get stuck, find out what they've done from experience versus what they've heard is usually done, all those things, and really boil it down to their unique situation. Because, like with insurance, you can have a room full of people pull out their policies and compare, and you'll rarely have two people in that same room with the exact same figures on that piece of
yeah,
paper. So you
yeah,
have to boil it down to what is your situation? What is your why? Why are you even getting into this? And it has
yeah,
to be deeper than just, oh, it looked nice. It was money. Because there's so many other things that less stress you can make some money off of. So
yeah.
thank you again, you guys, for your time, your transparency. And do you have a preferred way that people reach out to you? Do you care to have people reach out to you? Either one of you?
yeah, my email, siobhan.flood@smflogistics.net.
Okay. James?
Mine is Big Orange Transport at gmail.com. That's BIGORANGE transport at gmail.com. That's because I live in Knoxville, Tennessee, where we still root for a terrible football team and we call them the Big Orange. So
The
there you
big
go.
orange. I was wondering. I
Yeah,
was just like,
Big Orange
okay. Big
Transport.
All right. Well, awesome. Like I said, I will go ahead and send the copies of this video to you so you'll have
Okay.
it to
Awesome.
distribute as you are. And thank you for allowing us to record this. So I'm going to turn this off. And thank you for everyone for watching. And please make sure you're subscribing to the YouTube channel to be able to hear more stories of people in the actual field and get a better feel of how you can be in the field as well. So thank you again. And I am turning off.